Pokemon Go is taking over the world, and now you can incorporate the game's effects in your presentations. What you just saw was made entirely in PowerPoint, so stay tuned to learn how to do it. And make sure to download the free working files for this tutorial so that you can follow along more easily. In the free download, you get the different versions of the ball, which I made myself using PowerPoint shapes, as well as a cute bouncing bunny, since I'm not able to give away the Pikachu, and a custom designed background landscape for your use. If you want the fully done slides, they're included in my spicy slide pack, which also contains the slides to my other videos as well. And with the slide pack, you can easily swap out the bunny for yourself or your friends or even your boss and capture them in the ball instead. So check out the pack in the video description as well. And with that, let's jump into the tutorial. So let me walk you through how I did this. Because this is a very complex animation that involves a lot of moving pieces and many different effects, it's going to be a lot easier for me to just show you what I did rather than recreate it from scratch. So let's get to it. First, what we're going to do is open the animations pane so that you can see all of the animations here. And as you can see, there's a lot of stuff going on here. And we'll walk through how to do this. The other thing I want to do is just open up the selection pane by going to Home, Arrange, and then Selection pane. What this does is it shows you all of the different pieces here, and it allows you to rename them to whatever you want. And that way, when you look at the animation pane, you can see what they all are, as opposed to having, group 5 or oval 6, text box 7, that sort of thing. The other thing you can do with the selection pane is that you can actually hit the eye icon and you can remove some of these shapes from here. So that way it's a lot easier to work with. So it's just a really great tool when you have a very complex set of animations like here. And in fact, what I'm going to do is actually get rid of everything here, or hide everything, I should say, except for some of the very first pieces that we're going to work with. Okay, so now we've simplified this image quite a bit. We just have the ball and the Pikachu showing. And actually, let's get rid of the ball as well for now, so that we can focus just on the Pikachu, since that's the first thing that you'll see. And let me make this a little bit smaller so that you can see this part. Basically what happens is this Pikachu is made up of 4 different pieces of this body here, this tail, and 2 ears that are actually longer than what we need. And I'll show you why that is in a second. Let's just move this back here by hitting Control Z. So when you have this going at the beginning, let me just select these pieces so that you can see it kind of bouncing at the beginning. And there are 4 things happening at once, and I'll go through each one by one. The body here is very subtly compressing inward, and what I did is I created an invisible shape just below it, and I grouped it together. So if I click, let's see, actually if I scroll over here on the selection pane, we have this thing called the invisible piece, which I can't seem to select here, but I can select it if I go here, and you can see where that is. And that is the same height as the Pikachu itself, so that way when we use the grow shrink effect animation, it will just compress from the top down as opposed to doing anything horizontally. So let me just show you what that looks like in the animations. Grow shrink, and then if you go to effect options here, you have here that it goes to 95%, and the compression is just vertical. Next, we have the tail, and the tail actually also has an invisible shape next to it. I didn't mark that here, but that's what this is. And that is so that it can kind of rotate one way and then back in a very subtle way and have this point here. Let me just show you by hiding this, the much fancier way of doing it. When you're moving this, it'll actually spin on the middle here as opposed to spinning on the middle of the tail. And again, if we go into the animations for this, you can see that it's a spin effect and it's 5% counterclockwise. It doesn't really matter if it's clockwise or counterclockwise. And then the key here is that we have an auto reverse built in here. So that way it goes 5% counterclockwise and then comes back to create that kind of subtle tail wagging effect, if you will. In terms of the timing, and this goes for all of these actually, we have a repeat here of 4 times, so it kind of bounces up and down 4 times before the next animation comes, which is the ball that captures it. And the duration is 0.35 seconds. To be honest, that to me is a little bit fast. I think it looks more natural if you have it at a 0.5 seconds, but the reason I made it at 0.35 is that for the video, the song that I was using was very fast and it didn't look right if the Pikachu was moving very slowly. So I can actually just show you what that would look like, what the bounce would look like with the 0.5 seconds. Highlight this and you make this, let's say 0.5, then this is what you get. It's much more subtle. And if you make it 0.75, it's even more subtle. And that almost simulates how subtle it is in the game. So let's make it 0.35 again, just since that's how it was before. And then finally, just working our way to the top here, we have our 2 ears. Now they both have a very subtle motion, just like the tail, and they also have that little bounce effect like the body does, to be in sync with the body. So let's just take a look at the left ear here. We have a grow shrink of 90% vertical, so it bounces a little bit more than the body, although 95% is fine as well. And it has this auto reverse like we talked about before. The other piece is that it has the spin effect too, and that is just 10% clockwise, and then there's also an auto reverse. So just like the tail, it moves in a very subtle way with the body. And just a quick note that this ear moves clockwise, so it goes kind of down this way. This ear actually goes counterclockwise. So if I click on the right ear here and I look at the spin effect, it's counterclockwise. And one final note is that just like the tail, the ears are actually longer than what is needed. They're actually twice as long so that they're spinning kind of like right here. And if you have a shorter ear, you can do the same thing that I did with the tail and put an invisible object so that it kind of lengthens it and allows that spin point to be right here. Okay, let's undo that. It's a subtle movement, but a lot of thinking goes into it. Okay, so basically we have that Pikachu going on here, and then here comes the ball. So the first thing the ball does is it enters the slide. So it has an entrance effect here. Let me go to the animations pane again. A very subtle fly-in animation. It just basically just peeks in quickly. And then here comes the interesting thing. It now has a custom motion path to kind of go up and then bounce on top. This is where the ball would end. So the custom path, you can't really see it, but it's basically like this right here. So of course it can't land the same size as it began. So as it's flying, we need to make it shrink. So here, the next animation here is the grow shrink effect, and we make that go down to 30%. And nothing too special there, except for the fact that I had to play around with the timing. You see, it's not quite at the end of the motion path, it kind of gets smaller just before. So next, the ball disappears. So we have a disappear animation, and that happens right at the end of the motion path here. So at the end of this motion path, when this ball disappears, it now gets replaced by a smaller ball. And let me show you what that looks like here. That ball actually has two halves. It has a red half and a white half. So let me just turn those on. This is the ball that's going to open when it goes up to the top here. And what I've done is I've made it two halves. This is the red half, and this is the white half, or maybe the gray half. And as you can see, the red half has another invisible object up here that's grouped with it. And again, that's so that when it gets up here, we can pivot like this. And it'll pivot around this axis point as opposed to pivoting kind of in the middle of the shape. So the big ball goes away, and then this ball replaces it. And then as soon as this ball replaces it, it bounces all the way to the top here, and both halves have to go up here to do that. So after the big ball bounces and shrinks, it leaves, and then the red half and the white half of the ball appear, and then they go up here with the motion paths. So we have a disappear that is with a 2.35 delay for the big ball. And then we have the red half of the ball appearing, and then the white half of the ball appearing at exactly the same time with an appear animation. Next, we have the white half of the ball and the red half of the ball traveling up with a duration of 0.5 and a delay of 2.45. And once the ball gets up here, it has to open up, just like I mentioned before. So we have this partial spin effect on this red half of the ball, and it has a rotation of 110 degrees clockwise. Once it opens up, then we have the pieces of the body getting sucked into the ball up here. So then we see these motion paths here, and they have a duration of 0.15 and a delay of 0, and they start after previous. So all of these pieces go up here together, and then as they go up, they also shrink significantly. So each one of the pieces also has a grow shrink effect at the same time, and it goes down to 10%. So the motion paths and the grow shrink are together. They all start with previous, except this first one, which starts after previous. And then once they go into the ball, they all disappear. So there's a disappear animation on all four of these pieces, and then the red half of the ball closes up. So it essentially has the reverse of what we had before. So it's 110 degrees counterclockwise this time. Now, one thing I actually forgot to mention here is that, of course, when you're throwing the ball, there's going to be some targets that are in front of the Pikachu. So let me just turn those on really fast so we can look at them. First, we have the white target, and then we have the green target. So as you can see, those actually turn on right when the body is bouncing, and then they turn off right when the body stops bouncing and gets captured. So we have a fade entrance effect that has a 0.15 delay and a 0.25 duration on both of these, and then a fade out effect at 2.25 seconds. Okay, so I know that that was a lot of information because this is a very complicated set of animations, but they're really worth it once they're done. So let's recap everything until the ball goes up to the top right before it actually sucks everything in. So it's bouncing, the ball and the targets turn on, it bounces, becomes two halves, and then the halves fly up together. And let's stop here for now. Now, of course, there are some lights that also happen as the ball opens. So let's look at those right now. So the first piece is what I like to call the light halo. So let's turn that on. So let's take a look at the animations for this first. So initially, it actually enters the screen with a zoom entrance effect with a duration of 0.1 seconds. And it enters right after the white and the red half of the ball go up here and land. Then after all of the sucking in happens here, right after the pieces of the Pikachu disappear, it actually expands to 200% with a grow shrink effect. So we have 200% up here. And then just after that, with after previous, it actually exits with a zoom exit effect. And both the expand, the grow shrink, and the exit effects are 0.25 seconds in duration. So let me go through the rest of the light elements and then I'll show you how to actually make them because you can make them right in PowerPoint itself. The next light element is what I call the light ray. So let's turn that on as well. And it's basically a trapezoid that kind of beams down from this light halo. And this starts off also with a 0.1 second duration of an entrance effect. But this entrance effect is a wipe animation straight down. So it kind of goes down from the light halo. It then exits also with a wipe effect upwards this time, right after all of the pieces of the Pikachu disappear. So you see that right here with a 0.25 second duration. The next light element is what I call the light splash. So let's turn that on. And this is a series of small ovals that kind of emanate from this center here. And they just kind of flash up quickly on the screen and disappear. So if we take a look at the animations, we have an entrance effect that's an appear animation that happens at the same time as the ball opens. So it starts with previous with a 0 second delay here, and then it leaves just with a disappear animation along with the other pieces of the Pikachu body. And then the final light element that we have here is what I call the light blinks. So they are 3 pieces here that appear just after the ball closes. And the previous 3 that we talked about happen before the ball closes. So we can see the ball closing and then the light blinks happening right afterwards. So the light blinks, in terms of animations, they have the exact same animation style as the halo. So they have an entrance effect that's a 0.1 second duration and it's a zoom. And then we have a grow shrink that actually expands to 200%. And then we have a zoom exit effect. And the way that I have these timed is that the first one, which is ironically named Light Blink 3, even though it's the first one, it's here and it happens first. And then just as that one is exiting, the second one, which is this one, is appearing. And then just as this one is disappearing, the first one, or the light blink 1, which is the third one, is appearing. So we have, so for example, light blink 2 has the zoom happening, and then light blink 1 has a 0.1 second duration of a zoom that happens just at the same time. So it starts with previous.
Okay, so those are all of the light elements, and I think that should be everything that is on this slide. And actually, what I forgot again is this great text box. And this is just a text box that says great, that turns on just as the ball is going up here with all of these motion paths, and it has a 0.25 second duration of a fade, and it has a delay of 2.35 seconds delay, so it happens very close to when the motion paths happen here. And honestly, you just have to make it approximate. It really doesn't matter exactly when it appears, but it should be shortly after the ball bounces off of here. And then it actually ends just before the light blinks happen, right after the ball closes. So, and the exit is just a fade that's 0.25 seconds duration. It happens with previous. Okay, so those are definitely all of the elements that are on this slide. And let me just show you, just like I promised, how to make the light effects in PowerPoint. So let's start off with this one, the light halo. And let's close the selection pane. Let's close the animation pane, and then let's open up the format tab and go to shape styles. And then we go to fill. And actually, this is a combination of two pieces here. We have a front piece that is a white light, and it's a gradient fill. It's a path type of gradient, and we have two gradient stops. One is at the 62% position, and then it has a white color with a 0% transparency. The second stop is at 100% position, and it's 100% transparent, and it's also white. So essentially, like if you look at this separately, it looks kind of like this. And then the other piece here is just yellow, and it has a similar style. It has a at a 52% position, it has transparency of 0, and then and it's a yellow color, obviously. And then it has a 100% transparency at the very end at 100%. So in this way, you can create this subtle gradient effect for the light halo. For the light ray, it's something similar, except it's just one shape, and it has a little bit more of a complicated gradient path. It's a linear gradient this time with an angle of 90%. The first gradient stop is at 18% position and transparency 0, and it's a white color. Next is this kind of light yellow color, and it's at 44% and also transparency 0. And then this orange one is at 67% position, and then it's 35% transparent. And then the final one is at 94%, and it's 100% transparent. So again, if you separate this out, it looks kind of like this. And as you can see, these are the dimensions for it. So let's bring that back to the start. And then next we have the light splashes. So this piece here, they're all the same type of gradient actually. And it's a gradient fill, linear, 90% for the angle. For the first stop, it's at 0%, it's 51% transparency, it's a yellow color. Then we have orange at 89 with 0% transparency. So these kind of greenish, orangish ones are at the bottom here where the grass is. And then when the sky begins, we have ones that are more white. So we have a gradient stop here at 0% with 52% transparency for white. And then at the 89% mark, we have also 0% transparency. But again, both of these are white, unlike these two. And you just kind of position these at, you kind of resize them. Some of them are more oval than others. Some are more round. And then you just kind of position it around the halo here, and then you group them all, and then they're all one object. And then finally, for the light blinks here, they're all the same. They're all the same format here. They're a little bit greenish actually. So it starts off with a white gradient here at 21% position and 0% transparency. Then we have this green piece here at 51% position and 67% transparency. And then finally we have this end piece that's at 100% transparency. And then you get this kind of a nice glowing gradient effect that's a little bit greenish. And I made 3 of them. You can make as many as you want. And it's just kind of surrounding the ball. And that is it for the light effects. And finally, just this great text box. I mean, it's Calibri 28 point font. It's a rounded rectangle, so you can kind of mess with the corners a little bit here. And then in terms of format, it's a solid fill with just a 59% transparency. So pretty simple compared to the light effects. Great, so now you know how to make everything on this slide. And let me just very quickly go through the animations again so that you can kind of monitor up here and just double check the starting times and the delays and all of that. So let me just go through quickly and then put on some music in the meantime so you don't get too bored. Then after this, I'll show you what the final sequence looks like for this slide. Okay, so let's see it all together. Excellent. Okay, so let's move on to the next section here with the ball dropping. This one is also complex, but not as complex as the first one. Okay, great. Let's move on to this next sequence. And before we do anything, I just want to say that for the transitions, at the end of the previous slide, you want to make the transition be after 0 so that it ends right when these animations end, so that it moves you right into here and you can begin immediately. And to start, just like what we did before, let's remove everything from this slide except the pieces that we're going to be working with. Okay, great. So the reason this is called the high ball is because it's at the high point here, and it actually looks a little bit different than when it falls, because that's actually going to be another ball. And here you can see the white part more because we're looking at it kind of from the bottom, and then here we're going to be looking at it from the top, so it's going to have more red in it. So we'll take a look at how to do that in a sec. So this high ball appears immediately when the slide begins. So we have an after previous, it could be with previous as well, with a duration of 0.25 seconds. And then immediately when the ball comes in, we have these light blinks that start up again, and we have 5 of them, and they're exactly like the previous light blinks. So you can actually copy and paste, and the only difference is obviously the size. And in terms of the color, if we click on one of these, I'll just show you that it's basically the same, except the outside piece is blue because it's against the sky. So at 21% position, we have white, and then at 51%, we have a 71% transparency in blue. And all of the animations carry over, which is really, really helpful. The only change with the animations is the timings. So here, because there are 5 light blinks, I didn't want to take the time to have them each kind of go one by one. So I've combined the timings a little bit. So basically the first one here starts with previous and has a duration of 0.1 seconds, just like before. The next light blink has a delay of 0.2, and then all the rest of the animations just go accordingly. So even though they each start with previous, you just have to do the math so that the delays make it kind of go right after the other, just like this. Light blink 3 actually starts at the same time as light blink 1, and all of the animations follow accordingly. And by the time you're done with the light blinks, you should be at approximately 1 second here. As soon as the light blinks finish, then the ball starts dropping, and then the sky and background actually go up with it. So it's a kind of a double animation. But actually before that happens, we have kind of a trick here that we do, which is putting a ball behind it that is going to be the same ball that lands here, because they're actually going to swap in the air. And that one is called low ball falling. So I have that here, and it actually is kind of looks like that, and it goes right behind this ball. And both of these are part of the free downloads. Once you have the motion path established on this ball and just kind of play around with the position of it, carry it over to this ball using the animation painter or hitting Alt plus Shift plus C. It's really, really important that the motion paths are exactly the same, because otherwise it's not gonna look right. And then after you have that motion path on here, add that fade animation, because the fade animation on the second ball comes just as the last light blink is happening and right as the motion paths are beginning. And the fade on this ball is just a delay of 0.75 and a duration of 0.25. So once the second ball appears, both of these are going to fall down with these motion paths, and you can see that the motion path is the same for both. And let's take a look at this actually right here. It has a 0.63 smooth start and a 0.9 second bounce end, and it's a total duration of 1.25 seconds. You can play around with this, of course, but it actually took me a while to get it right, so try it out for yourself as well. And of course, it actually is going to vary depending on the length of the motion path, which I can't really show you right now. You just have to get it approximate. But do play around with some sort of smooth start and then some sort of bounce, and just make sure that both balls are exactly the same. The other thing that happens, of course, is that the background goes up as the balls go down. And I found that the background actually needs to go up faster to make it look right. And the background just has a simple line on it with a smooth start of 0.25. And the delay is 0.75 and duration is 0.5. So it actually finishes before the ball's motion path finish, because the bounce end is what you're seeing over here. And then as the ball is landing here, we have a shadow that happens as well. And the shadow, just let me show you quickly here, it's just a circle or an oval with a solid black fill with a transparency of 53%, and I've simply added a soft edges to it of 25 points to kind of give it that very, very soft edge. And what the shadow does is that it actually zooms in as the ball is falling. So let me just take a look at that. And it's a 0.5 second duration and a 0.85 second delay. And then the shadow actually shrinks quickly and then expands as the ball is bouncing to kind of simulate a realistic effect. If we take a look at this, it goes down to 75% here with an auto reverse. So let's just combine all of this together and see what we have so far. Great, so it looks pretty good already, but now let's add the next piece here, which is kind of the little wiggle movements that we have. And in order to do that, we first add another ball to this actually, which is the low ball final. And this is located at the end position of the falling ball, and I just had to play around to make sure that it was at the exact end position. And again, this piece has an invisible object down here so that we can use that for a couple of animations that we're about to do. The first is that we have a spin effect on it that just makes it go off to the side just a tiny bit and then come back. So it's a spin effect of only 10% counterclockwise with an auto reverse. And it's a duration of 0.15 seconds, so it's really fast, and a 0.25 second delay. After that kind of comes back, the next piece is the same thing, except it's 10% counter or 10 degrees clockwise this time. So it kind of goes this way and then goes that way. And it gives you a little bit more of a dramatic effect than a teeter, which is what I'm using here for the next wiggles. And it's a 0.5 second duration. And we have a couple of them going on here. The second one is 0.4 seconds duration because we want it to be a little bit of a tighter wiggle than before. The other thing I want to add in here, just for extra detail, and you don't actually have to do this, is what I call the red glow on the ball. That is a kind of a glow effect that happens just as the ball is teetering, because that's what happens in the real game. And this is just kind of an overlay of this exact thing that's here. I just literally duplicated this and recolored it. And what that does is it kind of happens in between the teeters. So we have the first kind of double spin effect here, and then this just comes in as a fade in and then a fade out with a 0.35 second duration and after previous. Then we have the teeter happening, and then we have another series of red glows appearing between each teeter. And then the last one here just stays a little bit longer, so there's a 0.25 second delay on the last fade. Okay, so now let's go to the last part of this sequence, which is all the stuff that happens after the wiggles. Let's just go ahead and show everything that's left here. After all of the wiggles happen, the low ball actually does something cool, which is kind of compress down just like the Pikachu did and then go back up. So if we just take a look at this, the effect options for here, we have a 90% vertical shrink with an auto reverse, just like what we had earlier. And then right after that happens, we have this yellow light pool that emanates from the ball. And the way that appears is it starts off with a zoom animation here with a 0.35 second duration. After that, it actually grows to 150% at the same time that it is fading out. So it's kind of growing and fading at the same time. And I actually like this better than using a zoom out effect. It just looked a little bit smoother, so that's why I chose to do it that way. And if we take a look at the pool here in terms of the formatting, again, I made this directly in PowerPoint. It's a gradient fill with a path gradient, and it has this kind of olive yellow gradient stop at 43% with 100% transparency. And then at the end, it's yellow with a 31% transparency. And because of that, you get this kind of faded in look in the middle, and then this kind of harder edge on the ends, which is what it kind of looks like in the game. After the yellow pool, we have these stars kind of flying out and spinning from behind the ball. And let me just show you what they look like here. They're all kind of clustered behind the ball. And you can get those either through using PowerPoint's shapes, or you can get them from another website like freepik.com and then just look for star. And then those stars appear just as the light pool appears behind the ball. And then as soon as they appear, they start to come out with these linear motion paths. They're all 0.35 seconds in duration. And they have no smooth start, smooth end, or a bounce end. So they're just normal motion paths. And then at the same time, they also all have spin effects that are 90 degrees clockwise. And I recommend making just one star at a time and then just copying and pasting so that all of the animations are there, and then just change the angle of the motion paths. And then once the stars kind of arrive, then they do a shrink and turn exit. So you see that after these motion paths and spins happen. And then finally, after everything happens, we have the gotcha text box that pops up as just a fade and then a fade out. And the gotcha was just taken from the great text box that we had previously. So there's no additional formatting that you need to do. Phew, okay, well that is basically it. This was a very complex animation sequence, so if I explained in more detail, I probably could have spent 5 hours with you. But I have made sure to give you enough information so that you can recreate this entire thing with the free download files I've provided. Hopefully this was useful just to kind of understand all of the ins and outs of these kind of animation effects. And again, let me just go through quickly to show you what the actual animations were on this slide. And while I'm doing that, I just want to say that hopefully this video inspires you to try to make or try to copy different animation sequences from your favorite games or TV shows or anything that involves maybe cartoon type of sequences. And I am definitely not an artist or a designer, and I was able to recreate these just by looking at the game's effects millions and millions of times. So if even I can do it, you can do it as well, for sure. Well, thanks again for watching. Please comment, like, and subscribe if you liked this video, and see you for my next one.